All right. I was out in Las Vegas, actually Henderson, Nevada, on Thursday watching the 49ers and the Raiders practice. And I guess one thing that kind of stood out to me was it certainly appears like the 49ers offense is ahead of the 49ers defense, which is completely understandable when you take into consideration all the new faces on the 49ers defense. Also, on this particular day, Nick Bosa was not on the field. So while the Raiders had their top guy, Max Crosby, playing seemingly every snap that I looked over there, 49ers defense had some problems getting to the passer, Geno Smith. We saw a lot of that Geno Smith to Brock Bowers combination, something that clearly is a huge part of what the Raiders are trying to do under Pete Carroll. Of course, they also bring in the rookie Ashton Genty at running back. And, it's kind of difficult to tell when you're watching practice, like how good a running play is. Early on, there appeared to be some holes there for Genty to make it to the second level and maybe even beyond. But, when there's no tackling, it's kind of difficult to tell. But where the holes appeared to be there early for Gente, I think the 49ers did a better job later in their front seven of closing those gaps. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I saw out there on the practice field on Thursday and kind of talk more about the defense, which I witnessed. I saw a lot of saw every snap of the 49ers defense against the Raiders, and I tried to catch what I could from the 49ers offense. But let's start off with the offense, because we all know, the wide receiver position with, what could be three of their top four wide receivers are very much in question, right now, and certainly heading into the season too. When you think about Brandon Aiyuk, he's going to start the season on PUP and miss extended time once the season starts. Should be back, by mid-season, I would think. Also with Jauan Jennings and the calf injury and the contract situation, what's going on with him? We really don't have any clarity on that. And then Demarcus Robinson going through the appeals process, and I would think that a resolution should be coming on that soon. But I think it's fair. I think it's safe to assume a 3-game suspension, at least, I guess. So with those three guys, three of their top four, it does kind of lend the thought of what are they going to do in the passing game. And quite clearly, it's Kittle. McCaffrey's going to have a lot of that as well. But, for the 49ers, their whole idea is just kind of keep it rolling a little bit until everybody comes back, and then their wide receiving core should be good again, all things being equal, with a group of wide receivers, top four wide receivers, if healthy: Aiyuk, Jennings, Pearsall, and Robinson. So that's not bad. On Thursday after practice, Brock Purdy talked to the media in the big field house there in Henderson, Nevada. And I asked him about what he's been doing with Jauan Jennings to stay sharp, and what are those conversations like? And here's that clip from Brock Purdy talking about Jennings, and then he also brings Brandon Aiyuk into the conversation as well.
Jauan's not practicing, but do you have opportunities daily to get with him and just talk through stuff and just kind of stay sharp mentally with him?
Yeah, he's around, and so I always see JJ in the locker room and stuff, and we'll talk and talk about practice and whatnot, and just what he's seeing. Same thing with Aiyuk. Aiyuk, I'm always asking him, hey bro, what'd you see on this route or this rep? So they've done nothing but give me really good feedback. They care, obviously, and they're continuing to grow mentally and stay on top of their game. Obviously, I can't touch on what they're going through or whatever off the field and whatnot. So obviously, I want them out there, but those are my guys. So
and when you say that, what you see on this rep, you're talking about other guys running the route.
Correct. Yeah, there'll be other receivers running certain routes against man or zone or whatever, and I'll literally just go after practice and ask them, like, hey bro, did you see that rep? And they're like, yeah, this needs to be done. I would have whatever, and so they do a good job with it.
Okay, so that gives you some sense of where Brock Purdy's mind is and how he feels like once those guys come back that they can basically hit the ground running. Now, there's going to be some clear acclimation period when they come back. But, as far as seeing the game, being on the right page or the same page throughout the process, that's what Brock Purdy is talking about. Quite clearly, there's a lot that goes into playing wide receiver and playing quarterback, especially, well, in the NFL in general, but especially in the 49ers offense, because, they don't use audibles as far as let's check out of this pass play to another pass play. That's rarely done. The way they do it is, here's the play call, and depending on what the defense is showing, that changes the routes for the receivers. So, in other words, on this one play call, a receiver could be doing one thing if it's man coverage. He could be doing something else entirely different if it's whatever, a three deep zone or whatever the case may be, split safeties. So depending on what the defense is, that's how the quarterback adjusts the play without even articulating that to the wide receivers. So, what Brock is talking about when he's talking to Jauan Jennings and Brandon Aiyuk about what you see on this particular play that another wide receiver ran during practice, they're talking through these things of what they saw, what they would have focused in on, and what route they would have run as well. And so that's what he's talking about, just trying to stay mentally sharp in the 49ers playbook to whenever, so there won't be the miscommunications. And speaking of the miscommunications, we see it a lot with rookies, no doubt about it. And even the first game of the preseason, Jordan Watkins made that great catch down the field, 50-yard gain against the Broncos' number one defense. But then it was either the next series or the series after that. I think it was series after that. He ran the wrong route. And Mac Jones put the ball where Watkins should have been. Watkins was not there, and it ended up as an interception. And sometimes it's so minute, the details, a minor error could lead to a big play going back the other way, as was the case there in interception. So that's what the receivers are doing. That's what Brock Purdy is working on. One guy I haven't talked much about is Christian McCaffrey. And I think that's a good thing, because a year ago, I was talking about him pretty much every day, seeing where he was, how's the Achilles. And at this point, a year ago, the 49ers seemed to be under the impression that the calf was going to be fine. He just needed a couple weeks of rest, and he'd be out there week one. And as you recall, when the 49ers opened the season, he was on the 53-man roster, and he was available to get out there and play week one. And it was only 90 minutes before kickoff where it was determined, or at least we became aware, that he wasn't going to play. So he was not out there week one. I'm sure that destroyed a lot of people as far as the fantasy aspect of it goes, because that was a Monday night game. And if you had Christian McCaffrey in your starting lineup, I don't think there was anything you could do at that point to get somebody else in. So I would imagine a lot of fantasy owners across the country only started one running back week one of the 2024 season. But McCaffrey looks good. He's getting a lot of practice time. He's catching the ball out of the backfield well. He's running the ball well. He just seems to be, the guy that he was back in 2023. Certainly not the guy he was last year as he was going through that bilateral Achilles tendonitis. And I would think that, as he's gotten older, and last year being a great learning experience for him, it's kind of learning what you can do, what your body is capable of, because here's a guy that, basically got to where he was via his work ethic. And then to have to dial that down or just do different things probably came as, it's a change of lifestyle for him. So he's looked good. The fact that we haven't talked too much about him is definitely a good thing for Christian McCaffrey. But again, in these practices, getting a lot of action. 49ers have dialed him back a little bit. They give him, regular days off. But in the practice against the Broncos last week, he got a lot of action. And in the practice Thursday with the Raiders, got a lot of action. I would not expect to see him out there on Saturday afternoon when the 49ers play the Raiders in a preseason game. But Kyle Shanahan did say that he wants some of the starters to play in this game, and including Brock Purdy. So he said that he'd still think it over the 24 hours leading up to the game, what he wants to do, but that's what they're thinking there. Let's switch over to the defensive side from what I saw in the practice. And the first thing was that, without Bosa, the 49ers just don't have much of a pass rush, and especially, the guys who are out along the defensive line. And so, when the season starts, I think you're going to see Robert Saleh dial it up more, bring more pressures, be more creative with what they do in coverage and stuff of that nature. So wasn't much of a pass rush. I did see Alfred Collins get kind of a secondary pass rush against Geno Smith and probably a would-be sack on a coverage sack. And so, Alfred Collins is a guy who's going to get a lot of action on Saturday, especially with all the injuries on the defensive line. Kevin Givens is going to be out for a while. And then the rookies, CJ West goes down with a knee injury, hyperextended knee. 49ers are expecting him to be out. I would guess probably 2 weeks. We'll see. It's probably going to be a similar time frame as Mykel Williams, who also had a hyperextended knee in the practice a week earlier against the Broncos. One guy to keep an eye on, Dallas Flowers. He's been lining up a lot with 49ers first team defense with Renardo Green out. He had a really good play on a deep ball in the practice on Thursday. And so he's somebody, he really came out of nowhere. Back in 2023 with the Colts and Gus Bradley's defense, Dallas Flowers was a starter. He opened the season as a starting cornerback for the Colts and got off to a really good start. Take it for what it's worth, but his PFF grade was very good. He was having a really good game against the Rams in week 4 after starting weeks 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And then he sustains an Achilles injury that knocked him out, a torn Achilles, and that knocked him out for the rest of the 23 season. When he came back in 24, he wasn't as good. The Colts ended up cutting him. He ends up with Tampa Bay. They end up cutting him. Now he's with the 49ers, and I'm telling you, I had him on my 53-man roster projection the last time, and now, with Renardo Green kind of banged up, we'll see where it goes. But he made an exceptional play on a deep ball intended for Trey Tucker in the end zone. Just played the hands perfectly, was right there, and he's a long guy, 6'1", made the play. Let's see. So Jason Pinnock has been out. That opens the door, of course, for Marquise Siegel. Trey Brown has been out with the heel, both of those guys' heel injuries. So Trey Brown, I thought that he would be the number 3 outside corner and also compete for slot job. Right now, boy, those injuries open the door for Dallas Flowers as at least the backup number 3 outside cornerback. And then the Pinnock injury, you see Marquise Siegel really taking advantage of that. Also with Upton Stout out, we'll see if he plays in Saturday's game. Chase Lucas has done a good job at the nickel corner as well. One guy I think at cornerback who hasn't taken that next step is Darrell Luter. When training camp started, he was in competition for that number 3 cornerback. And again, when I say number 3 cornerback, I'm not talking about the slot guy. I'm talking about the top backup at either the cornerback positions to back up Deommodore Lenoir or Renardo Green. But Luter had the blown coverage in the game against the Broncos, and his coverage just hasn't been tight. A lot of Brock Bowers in practice on Thursday. Boy, the Raiders really feed him the ball. He caught a lot of passes. Lenoir had a good play in coverage against him on a deep ball, broke that up. But there was another play where Bowers just kind of manhandled Lenore a little bit. Lenore tried to kind of rip his helmet off, but Brower stayed on his feet and made a play. The best defensive play against Brock Bowers was from, you guessed it, Fred Warner. He was in coverage over the middle, breaking up a pass there. So Fred Warner looking to do his thing. Of course, I can't imagine he'll play Saturday. D Winters had a good practice. He's a thumper. He after those plays where I told you where there were holes for Ashton Genty early in practice, D Winters was one of those guys who had plugged up those holes later on and thumped Genty to the ground. So D Winters very clearly taking that spot, the will linebacker spot, over Nick Martin. Nick Martin, as I told you after the game on Saturday against the Broncos, Nick Martin did not have a good game. You know, the missed tackles, the bad angles, the pass coverage stuff. But as I told you, getting a feel for him and talking to him personally, I just felt like this guy gets it, and he's very serious and just has the right approach. And it seems like he's come back this week and put together a good week of practice. So we'll see if that carries over to the game. So Nick Martin, certainly a guy to keep an eye on, as well as a lot of those young guys on defense. You're going to see a lot of them on Saturday when the 49ers play the Raiders in preseason game number 2. So thanks for tuning into this video. Any comments, questions, hit me down below. And thank you so much for watching. And that is it for now.